force in your chest could very well kill you, if you're close enough, because it crushes you. I remember getting hit really from the side, and really, I've always been heavy, and it just lifted me. But I was several yards away, feet away at least, and it was very, very powerful. Now they obviously didn't pull out the water hose every time you were out there. Same thing with the dogs. I had seen dogs, sort of the police holding them, but they weren't ever turned on us, if you will. But the key was more how to protect yourself, and how to accept the name calling. I remember my first experience with that in the basement of First Baptist Church in Farmville. Some of the kids from the colleges came in, say like, would come in and would say, Ralph, we want to test you, make sure you're strong enough for this. And they'd get in your face and do the calling the N-word and cursing and pushing and shoving. And if you couldn't take it in that setting, although you knew the person didn't mean it, once you get worked up and you've taken a name call, even if for example, in our interview, and we would do a role play, at some point you might snap, and they would basically say, we appreciate you here, but we can't put you on the front line because that's what's going to happen to you, and it would basically teach what we didn't realize at the time was the Martin Luther King method. That is, peaceful resistance.
Yeah.
Win them over with love.
Yeah. So you get to Mississippi, and you had told me about this experience.
Oh, Miss Nellie.
Yeah. Can you tell me about that?
We would, what we would do in the mornings, we get our marching orders. You have to visualize these rural areas, most of them down long country dirt roads and so forth, and it's amazing how many people were back up in there. In this area I went to, I actually had gone twice. I had gone first and introduced myself, and wasn't successful in terms of winning her over or her family. So we went back and carried the information, and she was ready this time to go. So we provided transportation, and we went down. I really can't recall the name of the town, but it's the county. But we went to the registration office, and it was one of those. Looking back again, was one of the classic voter suppression methods I've ever seen. Is that for us to get into the courthouse was the back door, and in this particular area, there was a back door up some wooden steps to the back of the courthouse, and that was the colored part of doing business. So we get there, and I look up, and there's these steps, and I got Miss Nellie with the cane. I said, "Oh, I said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize." She said, "I'm going up here." So she struggled. This is Mississippi heat, July, early August. I mean, I'm hot, young, overweight kid, and she's struggling up the steps. I'm thinking this lady's gonna fall back on, So we get to the platform, and this guy opens the door. "What do y'all want?" And she said, "I'm here to vote." And he said, "Well, we close for lunch." I looked back, I said, "Oh, man, we gotta go down there." So she said, "We'll wait." I said, "Miss Nellie, no, let's." She said, "I'm going to wait." We set up on that platform. It probably was 11:30, quarter to 12 when he said that. Nothing by 12:30. Really nothing by 1 o'clock. And listen, we didn't have bottled water, anything then. We were just there. I think I remember sucking on the sweat of my handkerchief or something, I don't know. But so he opens the door to see if they gone. And he shut it, right? So the next time, about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, he opened it, cracked it, and she threw that cane in the door. She said, "I said I want to register to vote." And he said, "We're not open yet." So she said, "I'll wait." So about 5 minutes later, they opened, and we went in there, and I was helping her read the stuff, and it was just her proudest moment. I mean, I cried. She, tears and stuff. We got back there and said, "I understand that she actually did go back to vote. Because voting, I was in school when they voted in November, and I really didn't want to go back to go with her, because she looking back typified what today. I mean, there are Miss Nellies out there today that won't go vote because it's difficult. The steps aren't there, but they creating all the stuff, and that's the kind of thing that bothers me now. That experience, but that relationship with her is what kept you going. Whether it was not so much voter, if we were doing something to help someone during the summer because they had been mistreated, and the gratitude that they saw, that the world isn't so bad after all. That yet there's 1999,000 hatred there, but there's one or two people with good hearts, and they, to expose them to the good of the system, if you will. It was gratifying, and I think all of us shared that. Is that we weren't getting paid, obviously, and you couldn't pay me for the feeling that I got. That because today I serve as a during this time as a voting precinct captain, if you will, assistant captain, and last year, the second Obama election, this lady came in, and she had never voted before. And she said, she came to me, and I said, no, get in line here. And she said, what do I have to show? And she had all the credentials. And I walked over to the person collecting the tickets and told him she wanted to vote. And she told him, this is my first time. So she spent, by this time we had text machines and all. So she spent a few moments back there. But I'll tell you, when that lady walked away from that, it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
She was so proud, and we saw it a lot with the Hispanic community when they came in and really started voting, and the pride on that face. Well, that's what drives you.
Right.
Is seeing people take advantage of what's rightfully theirs.
Right. Right. Now, you also were a part of the original March on Washington.
63.
Let's talk about that.
Well, bless his heart, my father had to arrange a fishing trip for him and me because my mama said, no way, no how are you going up there. And he and I used to fish every Saturday morning anyway. And so he got me down, and we were on a bus and went. I had been to Washington as part of a field trip in school, I guess 7th grade, and touring, the typical school tour. But that wasn't going to Washington. That 63 March was going to Washington, because even then, in my relatively uneducated state of what was going on in the nation, it was very, very clear that there was a movement and there was something about to happen in the civil rights area, because it was just so energizing among the people. And I had, at that point, and I'll use this word advisedly because I don't want to mislead, I had met Martin Luther King prior to that. What happened was they brought him in to Farmville to sort of give us a, hang in there, kids, we're going to get you back in school kind of pep talk. It wasn't publicized, and they just brought him into the basement of First Baptist Church, or maybe the sanctuary, and talked to us very briefly. And he was in Richmond for something else, and they brought him in and got him back out. But those words, when I have to apologize, I can't remember the quote now. I have it in some of my papers, but the words he said to us then about the importance of what we were doing and how it would never be forgotten and the impact we were making, they registered. And so what drew me to the 63 March was more, having heard what he said, I need to hear more than what it was all about. But when you got there, you clearly knew what it was all about, because people from all around the nation, all of a sudden Prince Edward was that, in my life leading up to that, Prince Edward was the whole deal. Everybody else is fine. Prince Edward is the only little stupid town. No, it was nationwide, and the stories you were hearing among the people, among the heat, and among all of that. And then the speeches leading up to it, and obviously his speech. I remember I was sophomore in college, I think, then. And the first semester of our sociology class, the professor used that speech. We analyzed line by line of that speech. And of course, part of our testing was to actually be able to say the speech. I don't think any of us said it that verbatim, but it had a major impact, just a major impact, and it was came to life, of course, 50 years later when they had the one in 2013. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 50 years later. Mm-hmm.
So compare the first one with the second one. What was it like?
Well, now the second one for me actually wasn't the true second one. There was that confusion because the second one, from King perspective, occurred in the middle of the week. The second one I went to was really the one from Al Sharpton's group on that Saturday. But the atmosphere, it was different. It brought back a lot of memories of the first. Times have changed, so the attitudes were different. I think in '63, I'm sure there were a couple of, quote, spies or nosy people in the crowd, but I think that group then all had been or witnessed some part of suffering. And this year, I think it was pretty much a lot of the same, but the suffering, the experiences were different. They were for the cause when they came this time, but they weren't for the cause because they had a brother or a neighbor that was being abused or had been mistreated. So the spirit probably was at a different level. But when you started listening to much of the more of the major speakers, not those that were coming through and mouthing the words and so forth, and I'm not disparaging what they did. It was a good effort. It wasn't as impactful, obviously, as the '63 one, but it did foster discussions among younger kids, like at my church and in the neighborhood. I'm active in the neighborhood now, and it brought back to the front a history that just isn't taught to our kids or to any kids, except by a news item. Then they'll bring up and they'll repeat